Continents. There are 7 continents in our world: Africa, Antarctica, Asia, Oceania, Europe, North America, and South America. And throughout time, with the movement of tectonic plates, these continents have moved around the surface of our planet, from the original Pangea to the disposition they are in now, continuing to move to form a new supercontinent in millions of years from now. But other than these moves, and sometimes precisely because of them, our continents both look different and were in bigger number. Some continents simply disappeared off the face of the earth, either due to the rising of water levels or to other events. So in this video, we're going to understand what these lost continents or lost landmasses are, learn where some of them were, and understand why they disappeared. Let's start with a quick definition of what a lost continent is. Most of these lost continents are essentially plateaus or mountains made of continental crust, in the same way that our actual continents are. The only difference is that these lost ones are hidden from our view below sea level. Essentially, if an area is just ocean, then it will have water and then oceanic crust beneath it. Continental crust is typically 30 to 50 kilometers thick, while oceanic crust is only 5 to 10 kilometers thick. And by identifying more and more areas that, despite being underwater, have continental crust instead of oceanic one, what investigators have concluded is that many areas that are below sea level aren't just sea. They in fact used to be land masses above water level, just like the ones we have and know today. They just happen to now be submerged. In the same way that if all of Europe disappeared and suddenly went underwater, we'd still recognize the area as Europe. It would just be uninhabitable due to the flooding, as we can see on this map, predicting what the continent would look like if all the ice on our poles melted. Many of our current continents had larger sizes, with their continental crust area extending into what is now the ocean, and many islands and archipelagos of the world were much larger. With the rising of waters or movement of tectonic plates, these larger areas became submerged. So now that we understood what these lost continents are, or lost areas of continental crust belonging to existing continents or islands throughout the world, let's list out a few of them and check where they were. Whether they would all be continents per se or simply land masses is, I guess, an important question. By convention, continents are understood to be large, continuous, discrete masses of land, ideally separated by expanses of water. Some of these are big and or separated by water, others not so much. Starting with Zealandia. Zealandia is an almost entirely submerged mass of continental crust that subsided after breaking away from other continents around 23 million years ago. It was part of the supercontinent Gondwana, which joined South America, Africa, India, Madagascar, and Oceania. There's a bunch of geographical explanations as to why it became underwater. Apparently, it was mainly as a result of widespread late Cretaceous crustal thinning preceding the supercontinent breakup and consequent isostatic balance. Now, I also don't really understand what any of that meant, but from what I could understand, this essentially means that the land was pushed apart. And because of this, it thinned up to a point of breaking apart, causing it to be separated by water, with the lower areas being placed underwater, as we can see on this informative image. Satellite imagery shows this area to be almost the size of Australia, and New Zealand itself is the only part of the old continent to be above water, with the remainder 94% being submerged. Its area is 6 times the area of Madagascar, the next largest microcontinent in the world. If it was suddenly all above water level, its territory would mostly belong to New Zealand itself, but also some to New Caledonia, so France, Norfolk Island, and Lord Howe Island. The other one on the thumbnail, Dockerland. Dockerland isn't exactly a continent in itself, but rather an expansion of the European continent. It was, or is, a submerged landmass that connected continental Europe and the island of Great Britain. It was flooded by rising sea levels around 65,000 BC. That's not even that long ago. Some geological surveys even point to it stretching all the way to Denmark. Dockerland was named after the Dogger Bank, which in turn was named after 17th century Dutch fishing boats called doggers or dodgers. I don't know. The condition of the area was first identified in 1931 when a fishing boat dragged up an antler point that was subsequently dated to a time when the area was above water. Vessels have since dragged up remains of mammoths, lions, and other animals, and a few prehistoric tools and weapons, and studies have demonstrated it was in fact inhabited by humans who both hunted and farmed in the region. If it were suddenly back above sea level, it would belong to the United Kingdom, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and Denmark. Before we keep going on with the video, a quick message from today's sponsor, NordVPN. Look, if you're online, the reality is your information is likely exposed to a bunch of companies and people that you probably don't want to. With NordVPN, you can make sure that all your personal data is 100% secured. You even have the option of using double encryption with it. On top of that, you get to benefit from two features that set NordVPN apart from its competitors. First, speed. NordVPN is the fastest VPN out there with over 5,300 servers worldwide, and it also removes any type of speed limitations your internet provider may apply to your service. And second, freedom. With NordVPN, you can access the internet as people do from pretty much anywhere in the world. This will allow you, for instance, to access streaming services catalogs from other countries. You can use it on all your devices, at home, traveling, pretty much anywhere and anytime. They also offer great 24/7 support to all their clients. Go to nordvpn.com/knowledge to get a 2-year plan plus 1 additional month with a huge discount. Plus, it's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you want all the advantages of a great VPN, try NordVPN today. Now back to the video. Another example of a land that wouldn't exactly be its own continent, but an extension of another, in this case too, is Beringia. Beringia is the submerged area that connects Asia and North America. This GIF is great as it shows us the change in sea level in the past 21,000 years. It is said that first humans that reached America traveled precisely through this landmass. Today it is separated by water, and the narrowest distance between mainland Russia and mainland Alaska is approximately 90 kilometers. However, in the body of water between the two continents, known as the Bering Strait, in the Bering Sea with the same name as this submerged landmass, there lie two small islands known as Big Diomede and Little Diomede. One is Russian and the other American, and the stretch of water between these two islands is only about 4 kilometers wide and actually freezes over during the winter. So you could technically walk from the US to Russia on this seasonal sea ice. Curiously, during those ice ages, Beringia, like the most of Siberia, was not glaciated because snowfall was very light. It was instead a grassland steppe. The Yupik people would have lived there, with their heritage being present on both shores today. Going back to Oceania, Sundaland and Sahul were also expansions of the current landmasses. Sunda unites parts of Malaysia, Thailand and Indonesia, while Sahul unites Australia with parts of Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, as well as their island of Tasmania. These images attempt to predict the existing landmasses during the ice ages. With the end of the ice ages, these regions went back to being separated by water, as they are today, with Asia becoming smaller in size and Australia becoming separated from its nearby islands. Parts of these areas, especially in Indonesia, continue to sink up to today, and their land above water might reduce even more. Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, is effectively sinking, causing them to have started building a new one in a safer area. Mauritius is finally another example of an actual lost continent, even though it was a micro-continent, situated between India and Madagascar until the separation about 70 million years ago. It also disappeared as a result of the breakup of Gondwana, like Zealandia. It seems this supercontinent, upon its breakup, led to the loss of a lot of land that sinked. The islands of Réunion and Mauritius today are some of its remnants above the sea level, but it didn't all sink with only these regions remaining above water. What apparently happened was that upon breakup from the supercontinent, Mauritius continued to sink, compress, and become heated until it was partly relaunched to the surface by the volcanoes that created the Mauritius Islands. The Kerguelen Plateau was another result of the Gondwana breakup around 130 million years ago. Located southwest of Australia, it was nearly 3 times the size of California. The presence of soil layers indicate that much of it was above sea level as a microcontinent for hundreds of thousands of years, if not more, at one point likely being covered by a dense forest. The plateau had been proposed as a possible land bridge between India and Antarctica during the late Cretaceous period, although this is now considered unsupported, with the plateau being situated considerably far away from the nearest continents, and effectively being its own gigantic island, a microcontinent. It finally sank 20 million years ago and is now 1 to 2,000 meters below sea level. A small portion of the plateau still breaks sea level today, forming the Kerguelen Islands, a French overseas territory, plus the Heard and McDonald Islands, which are from Australia. Other sets of islands throughout the world share this situation, with larger continental landmasses around them, but being submerged, with the islands themselves being the only areas which survived above water. The Portuguese Azores in the middle of the Atlantic, for instance, even have a legend that they would be the remaining hills of the mythical city of Atlantis from antiquity. Obviously not true, but a good illustration of this reality. These are known as lost microcontinents or continental fragments, essentially pieces of continents that have been broken off from main continental masses to form distinct islands that are often several hundred kilometers from their place of origin, but which might have since been placed underwater for various reasons. There are a number of examples of these throughout the world, some of which have successively remained above water, like the island of Madagascar. Examples of smaller ones are, for instance, Cuba or Jamaica. With the rising of sea level over the next years, there might be many landmasses that exist today which will disappear, sharing the condition that these ones currently do and becoming more lost lands of the world. So, those are what lost continents are, and a selection of the most well-known or significant ones that were lost. From extensions of large continents that still exist today, but used to be much larger, like Dockerland, to plateaus of archipelagos that used to essentially be microcontinents, or even full-on continents themselves, like Zealandia, or many of the other ones we saw. Are there any other relevant lost continents I forgot to mention? Let me know in the comments along with your opinions and or corrections. Thanks so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you want, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge.